Weirich, and this is an art instructor video by Royal and Langnickel. In this video, we are going to dive into the world of sketching. Sketching is wonderful because it's not as fussy or needs to be as perfect as painting or drawing. We're going to get our ideas down on paper accurately, but we're not going to worry about making it perfect. We're going to work with a bunch of different materials, from compressed charcoal to vine charcoal, charcoal pencils, and drawing pencils, and I'll even show you what all of those little numbers on the edge of your fancy drawing pencils mean. We're going to start off with a loose sketch in charcoal, and we are going to sketch this giraffe. It's a lot of fun, and I like how you get to start off kind of loose and messy and blend and smudge, and it all adds to the visual appeal of the drawing when you're done. After that, we are going to sketch a horse using our graphite pencils. So that's a little bit more controlled and refined, but I think starting off with something loose and sketchy like this, and then working into something that's a little bit smoother and more refined is a great way to kind of jump in to your artistic process. So are you ready to dive into sketching? Well, let's go to the table and get started. Let's take a look at our sketching supplies. We have a variety of fun things to draw with. We have pencils and charcoal sticks and erasers and lots of different things, but let's take a closer look at what they actually do. So you're probably used to a number 2 pencil. Everybody's used them since they were in kindergarten, and that would be this guy right here, although when you're buying it for an art supply, it's called HB. H stands for hard and B stands for black. At least that's how I keep it straight in my mind. Any pencil that has an H on it is going to be harder and give you a lighter line, and any pencil that has a B on it is going to be softer and give you a darker line. So this HB is right smack dab in the middle of the spectrum of pencils that are available. So in this set, I have a range running from 5H, which is super thin and hard. You can sharpen it to a really fine point. It leaves a very, very light gray line, and you don't have to sharpen it very often because the lead is so hard that it doesn't let much come off the pencil. And then as your number gets lower, the lead gets a little bit less hard. Okay, so think of the H as how hard the pencil is. Now, when you get to the B line, your B pencils are softer, and as you get a higher number next to your B, that means that lead's going to be softer, and it's going to leave a darker, thicker, smudgier line. So this is a 6B pencil, and let's contrast that with our 5H pencil. Okay, you can see that lead is physically thicker, and it's going to leave us a darker, softer line. Now let's look at our HB, which is our guy right in the middle here, and we're going to see that it looks a little closer to the H, but it is a little bit thicker, but not quite as thick as our 6B. And I'll show you an example of these so you can kind of see the different results you can get from different pencils. First, let's look at our HB. This is our good old number 2 HB, and I'm just drawing here with normal pressure, how I would maybe doodle in a notebook or write something, okay? So that's what our HB looks like. Now let's look at our 6B. Again, I am just sketching with normal pressure. And you can see it leaves a much softer, thicker, and smudgeable line. If I want to color in something very quickly, it's very good for that because it leaves a nice thick path of lead in its wake, and it's nice for smudging if you like to do sketching and shading. Now let's look at the 5H, which is on the other end of the spectrum. You can even hear that it sounds a little harder and scratchier. So this gives us our thinnest line, and it holds a sharpened point longer. And it's good for maybe architectural drafting or mechanical drawing, or anytime you want to draw small with a lot of detail. The trade-off is it's not very dark. This pencil is very dark, but the trade-off is it's going to wear down quicker and your line's going to be thicker. So think of that as you are choosing the pencil that's right for you for a particular job. B means black, and it's going to be soft. H means hard, and it's going to be light. HB is in between, and that's our good old number 2. Now that graphite we love that comes in the pencil also comes in blocks or sticks. So here we can see a variety of graphite, and you might have some other sticks in your set, in your sketching set, and the way you can tell the difference between the graphite and the other sticks is by looking for that HB, B, 2B, 4B, 6B. Look for those numbers. That's going to give it away. And also graphite has a little bit of a shine to it, okay? Whereas a compressed charcoal doesn't really have that same shine, and it looks more black versus gray. So you may be thinking, why would I want to use the stick when I have all those pencils? Well, sometimes you want to cover a larger area. Maybe you're doing a landscape and you want to put down a large tone area. Another trick that these sticks are wonderful for is, say you've done a sketch and you want to paint it. You can scribble the back of your sketch with this on its edge like that, lay your drawing down onto your watercolor paper or canvas and draw over it, and you've basically made yourself your very own transfer paper. So it's really great for that, or for any time you want to do really thick gestural drawings, like maybe you're in a sketching class and you just want to work big and quick. So the other sticks that we have here are compressed charcoal. They're kind of sometimes they're called Conte crayon. They feel kind of a different, like a cross between chalk and a pencil. They're a little dry, but they leave quite a bit of dark behind. They're heavier than, say, a vine charcoal, which we'll see in a second, and they wear down fairly quickly, but not as quickly as a vine charcoal. You can use the edges for fine lines, and you can use the ends bluntly for thicker lines. And these come in degrees of hard, medium, and soft. Of course, your softer pencil is going to get, your softer block is going to give you a thicker line, and your harder pencil is going to give you a lighter, thinner line. So, or block, I mean block of charcoal. And those are also available in pencils. You can see them right here. Now with the pencils, you do have to be careful because they need to be sharpened, but they're very delicate creatures. So this is our soft one. You don't want to use them in your pencil sharpener. The hard one is still darker than like our 6B pencil. Okay, even though this is hard for a charcoal, it's still going to be darker than that. And then, you know, your medium is medium right there. These will tend to break if you're not careful, and I recommend using a handheld sharpener such as this, or a knife to sharpen them. They will clog up and destroy your pencil sharpeners, your electronic pencil sharpeners, so just kind of keep that in mind. Now, another one of my favorite things to draw with are these vine charcoals. They're super, super light. They're light as a feather, and they come in different widths, and you can see just how quickly they lay down color. They're buttery soft. They do break easily, and there's no real scale printed on the charcoal, so you do kind of have to just play with them and see what you get. A lot of times the thinner ones are a little bit darker, ironically, and the thicker ones tend to be a little bit lighter, but there's not that much of a difference between sticks. They're the most smudgeable of all of our media because they're so light and airy that it doesn't take a lot of pressure to draw with them, so we're not grinding them into the paper like we are with the pressure of a graphite stick or a compressed charcoal. So to seal these, you can give them a spray of fixative or hairspray if you're putting them down pretty thickly, because they do tend to smudge. The other things that are in your kit are a blending stump, and this is really handy for blending your graphite and your charcoal while keeping your hands clean. I have a problem with that. I tend to just go right in with my fingers, but this gives you a nice detail. And you also have a sanding block here, and what this is, and you probably have one of these and you're like, what do I do with that, Lindsay? What you do is you use that to clean or sharpen your sanding block. So look at that. I mean, my blending stump, I've cleaned all that charcoal on there just by dragging it across the sandpaper. You can also bring it to a nice fine point if it wears down, and you can also use that to sharpen a point on your charcoal. Now there are a bunch of little sheets of this on there, so once it gets too dirty, you just tear off the top sheet and you've got another one ready to go. I honestly pretty much just use it for cleaning my blending stumps. I don't tend to sharpen stuff. I like having thick smudgy lines, but that's me, and you probably have a different preference because we're all different people. And we've got a couple different erasers. Now this is awesome. This is a kneaded eraser. I like it because I can like twist it into different shapes, and I can dab off a little highlight on an eyeball, or I can you know, gently lighten a color if I don't want to really erase it. And then you have a white plastic eraser, which is gentle on paper, and you can really take out a lot of media with this without damaging your surface, which is really nice. So the thing to remember is with a hard eraser you rub, and with a soft kneaded eraser you blot. Okay, and they're both very useful whether you're using pencils, charcoal, or colored pencils. Now, without further ado, let's do some sketching. For this project, we're going to sketch a giraffe, and I could pick the softest of my charcoal pencils, but I know that my vine charcoal is going to be a little softer, and also if I make a mistake, I know I can easily erase it. So that's what I'm going to start with, and I'm going to use one of my skinnier pieces just so my line doesn't get too thick. Now, for the giraffe's head, I am going to try to break things down into some basic shapes. I'm going to start with a line going across, and that's going to help me line up the eyeballs. And I'm going to put a couple kind of a little bit bigger than like a $50 circles here. And then I'm just going to kind of draw some lines kind of coming down underneath. And I'm going to put a kind of a blocky pentagon shape here for the snout. When you're sketching, you want to look at your object and say, what is the simplest shape that I can break this down into? And once you get that, that is going to really make drawing simple. So that way you draw what you see and not what you think you see. It's also really important to start a really basic and broad to begin with, because if I sketch it like this and I realize, oh, I got that eye wrong, that's in the wrong place, it's no big deal for me to fix it now. But if I started just drawing the eye and I drew a perfect eye and then I got the nose in the wrong place, I would have to erase that perfect eyeball that I drew. So I don't want that to happen. So that's why you want to start off bold first. And it's also easier to get things to be symmetrical when you begin in this manner. And I'm gonna bring the neck down like this. Get a little lower lip here. And we're gonna get our horns on there. So I'm gonna make a little line across just to kind of line them up. And I'm gonna draw one there. Now I have a very light grip. This could almost fall out of my hands. We don't want a death grip on our charcoal. It will break, okay? No death grip. No death grip on the charcoal. And we're gonna put our other little horn up here. There we go. Okay, and then for the ears, I'm gonna give myself a construction line to help me line them up. I know the tops of them are gonna be kind of in line with our little eyebrow shapes we got going there. So I'm just gonna pull out a nice long line. It helps keep them balanced. These lines may seem silly, but really they're gonna help you out a lot in the long run. And they're kind of like a curve coming down like this. And then we're gonna have a line going up like that to get our ear shape. And then we're gonna go over here and do pretty much the same thing. And it's never a bad idea to take a break. If you're like confused and you're thinking, geez, I don't know if this looks right, give yourself a break. Go fix yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, or take a little walk around the block. When you come back, it's going to make a lot more sense, and you'll be able to see it with fresh eyes. Like, this ear looks like it's a little too long for me, but I definitely can tell that once I have stepped away from it. So I'm just going to blot out the extra charcoal, and I am gonna take another try here. I think I got it just a wee bit too long, and maybe even a little too thick. Okay, thicken up the neck on this side a little bit. Make sure I got my snout good. We got a couple little bumps there. We're gonna have nostrils in there. I have to say, I use my fingers to blend more than anything else. But grab that stump if you need to blend something or you need to wipe something away and you don't want to get your fingers dirty. Thicken up the face on this side a little bit. But still, I'm not really putting any details in because I don't want to detail yet and then end up on the wrong track. Okay, so I'm feeling like I've got a pretty good idea of where everything is. Gonna just kind of connect this up a little bit to the edge of the face. I think that these bumps for the eyes might need to be out a little bit more. And then the eyes, I want to draw a line kind of under here for the top of where the eye is going to be. And the eyes are very far set out, so I want to get that in there where they belong, kind of far to the edge of the kind of eye humps that we put in there, technical term. And I want to get an eyelid in there because giraffes have pretty eyes. They've got an eyelid and usually a little bit of an eyelash happening. Very, very pretty. And then this can connect up like that. But again, we're still in this basic outlining, not outlining, but kind of like brainstorming, getting the basic foundation work in here. Okay, let's get our little nostrils. They actually look kind of like diamond shapes within our little humps that we drew earlier. They're kind of like a little diamond. And once I feel like I have I have everything laid out pretty well, then I can start going in with my more permanent media that's going to be a little bit darker. But you can do the whole sketch in charcoal if you want to. It lays down so quickly. Get my little shadow for my ears in there. Okay, so I'm not a big fan of erasing. I'm going to grab my stump. You can use your fingers. I honestly, if you guys weren't watching, I'd be using my fingers too. I'm just going to blend in these lines. So basically what's going to happen here is it's going to give me kind of a ghost of an image, and that way I don't have to do much erasing, and I can build on top of this with our charcoal pencils. You could also use the charcoal sticks. It's completely up to you. The pencils will keep your hands cleaner if that's important to you, and you do get a little bit more control with the pencil because you can sharpen it. The downside to the pencils is that they are more susceptible to breaking because they are so soft, and they're a thinner. The lead in a pencil is going to be thinner than the block, and it just doesn't have the durability sometimes. So, you know, there's, as with everything, there's pluses and minuses. And if you like, you can go in and you can erase any marks on the outside, or you can just leave them there and you can add some background, or you just leave them there. And I like to see kind of construction lines. So if you want, you can go in with a hard pencil first to see kind of how dark that's going to be. I think that since I have enough dark from like of that kind of like lighter shadow color from the charcoal pencil, I'm going to go right in with my soft one. So you can see it's got a thicker lead. The softer one is going to be your one that is going to want to break on you because the lead is so soft. It's, you know, think about having an icicle and trying to draw with an icicle. As it melts, think of that as like a soft lead, and it's not going to want to stay together for you, whereas like a hard charcoal pencil would be kind of like a freshly frozen icicle. It would stay together a little bit better. I love these real crisp, dark lines you get though. So now I'm going in and starting to add some detail. I like to get the eyes in. As long as I know they're in the right place, I like to get the eyes in, I should say. Now I am going to leave a little space for a highlight, which I will have to go back in and erase so that it's nice and bright, but that will give me an idea anyway. And we got a little ridge under the eye we want to get in there. I'm going to shape the face here. My giraffe looks very feminine. Okay. And I am going to come over here and work on that eye as well. Keep my little highlight here. My little ridge underneath. Get my eyelid. and get that shape of the face there, the bone structure here. And you can use your own judgment. You can make your giraffe more stylized, you can make it more masculine or more feminine, completely up to you. Now I like to keep, when I'm drawing like a fuzzy animal, I like to keep my lines kind of fuzzy because it helps with the effect. And also, when you're sketching, you generally don't have neat and tidy lines. Your lines are generally kind of messy and loose. Oh, something I think I want to get down pretty quick is some of the pattern on the giraffe. So the pattern is kind of starts here up near the cheek. So I'm just going to start by, I'm using very little pressure because I just want a lighter line. You could skip over to a harder pencil if you want to, or a harder charcoal, but I think if you just vary your pressure a little bit, you can get a lot of versatility out of one media. And in fact, I'm honestly much more likely just to grab one pencil and just sketch with it, and just like press harder when I want a harder line and press softer when I want a softer line. And I generally will go for like a 6B or something that's got a little bit more softness to it. And once you get the hang of doing these spots, I recommend not tracing them, not like drawing the outline, just going in there and shading, and then you'll get a more soft look like the giraffe spots would have. I wonder if giraffe spots are like a fingerprint. I've heard zebra prints are like that. They all have their own specific pattern, and I wonder if giraffes are too. But that really starts to give it that giraffe look once you get that pattern in there. Now up here on the cheek, you can add some more spots. Try to keep this muzzle area flat. You don't want to add any of the spots there. And they get very light as you go up. They just kind of turn into a little bit darker fur, and they get less defined. Just kind of keep that in mind as you're working. So now I want to put some of the shading, and once you get those spots in, another reason I wanted you to do that is because once the spots are in, you can start to put your other shading in. Otherwise you might get way too dark or way too light in your shading. It establishes value because the spots are going to be some of the darker areas, as are the eyes. So getting that dark value in right off the bat, I think, is a really good idea. I might switch over to the charcoal blocks when I want to do a little bit more tonal shading, where I want to affect a larger area. Now sometimes you can see that I've been smudging my hand. You can lay a piece of paper down. Let me just grab my scrap paper here. I can lay a piece of paper down to protect part of the artwork while I am shading. So you might want to do that so you don't drag your hand over places you've already done. Or because I don't like the idea of working like, I'm right-handed, working left to right, because I think you should kind of shade it all at once so that you don't get anything too out of whack. So just by putting that paper over while you're working will help. I don't want to do that while you guys are watching though, because I want you to be able to see how the whole thing is progressing. But if you're at home, go ahead and do that. Just make sure that you do move the paper from time to time so you can see everything you're doing. You don't want to end up having one side shaded way darker than the other because you had it covered up and you didn't realize what you were doing. Okay, this should be all part of the same kind of bone area. Like this whole area here is kind of all connected, so I want to make sure that I've got some shading that's gonna unify that. And then on our ear, adding a little more curviness to it. I've got this little curve. I wonder if it was probably because it's a zoo animal, it's tagged, I guess. And you can put in some kind of more wispier fur in there. So you're kind of going around the white. Now you could grab a white piece of chalk when you're done and go in and add some highlights, or use your eraser if you're working on light paper like this. Sometimes it's fun to work on a toned gray or tan or colored paper, and then go in and use a piece of white chalk or white charcoal for highlights. So that's just something to file away in the try it someday category, because it is a lot of fun. Now this ear is very smooth. It doesn't have that little dip like the other one does. Okay, so if you want to clean up, you can go ahead and get some of those bigger smudges out. You can also tone your paper by using the graphite stick or your charcoal stick and kind of just shading the whole paper and then sketching on top of that. Alright, so now you can go ahead and grab your blending stump, and any place that you think you want to smooth out your shadows, you can go ahead and do that. Like, I want to unify this whole mass here. And give it a little bit of toning. So you might be wondering, what's the difference between drawing and sketching? Sketching generally means you're doing something kind of quickly. You're just trying to capture the essence of an image or a place, and it's generally something you do a little bit quicker. Whereas drawing is something that's a little bit more of a finished work of art. Now what I'm doing here is redistributing my charcoal. I don't really want a lot of dark on this part of the muzzle. I want it to stand out, but I do want to get those little textury, kind of like wrinkly areas in there. So I am just, after I blend a little bit, I'm coming in and adding that to the muzzle, and that just helps give it a little bit more dimension. It keeps it light, but it doesn't look undone, because I'm getting that little bit of texture in there. I think it's so satisfying to sketch and draw because the results are so immediate, and you don't need a ton of supplies to do it. And you don't need an art studio. You could be sitting anywhere. You could be sitting, on a park bench, and you can sketch what's around you. All you need is a pencil and a sketchbook. Now I'm using some kind of very fluid. I'm kind of pushing the charcoal here. And I'm just going back. I want this bottom lip to be a little bit darker because it's being shadowed by the top lip. Alright, so now I'm going to go back. I think I'll go in with a medium actually, because I can get a little more detail here. And I am going to darken underneath the muzzle. I'm going to drag that charcoal down. I am going to go in and erase my highlight from this eye. That one stayed pretty good. I'm going to just make a really sharp little point on my eraser and just kind of go in there. And look at that, it comes out nice and bright. Now I'll go back in with my dark pencil and darken the eye around the highlight. I actually have two little highlights happening in there. I like to accent the eyelashes too. They have nice thick eyelashes. And let's see if the charcoal is a little bit darker than what... let's see if this compressed charcoal is a little bit darker. It is, so we can go in with this compressed charcoal to do any really, really dark passages. Okay, so I think for this background, I am just going to, instead of trying to erase all of that, I'm just going to smudge it. Give it a little bit of toning, give it a little bit of atmosphere. That bottom lip I feel like needs a little bit of highlight on the bottom. You can rub with a kneaded eraser, but it is generally better to just kind of press and lift. And then I think I need a little bit more detail around the nose, kind of muzzle area. So I am going to just kind of go around the nostrils like that and define with some kind of like kind of curvy lines. Shadow a little bit just with, I'm using the medium charcoal pencil because those little rims around the nostrils are a little raised up, so we want to show that. And if you want to draw in a few of those wrinkles, you can. I wouldn't get too crazy with it though, because it's not really a feature that you want to accentuate too much, because it doesn't really add to the giraffiness of it. And you can, I mean, there's a lot of other details that you could add in, such as wrinkles in the fur, but I think this is a pretty good depiction of a giraffe. So for you, the next thing you might want to do is looking for images of things to draw, and also go outside into the world and draw what you see, because drawing something from real life will just teach you a lot more about how shadow and light work. And it will just give you a really good perspective on when next time you're looking at a reference photo, how to make it look realistic. So there's our giraffe, and in a minute we're going to take a look at the pencils in the set and do a graphite rendering. For this lesson, we'll start off with our good old HB pencil. Remember, that's our number 2 pencil, the one you've been using your entire life, so it's a good one to get started with because you're already kind of used to it. We're going to sketch a horse, and we are going to break it down into basic shapes once more. Now, I'm going to start with an oval for the front haunches, kind of a horse. Hopefully you can see that. I might switch to a darker pencil just so you can see better, but I would recommend you start with this one because it's not too dark. Then we're going to do an oval for our back haunches. This is an action pose, so we have them tipped kind of the direction that they're moving in. We're going to connect the two. We are going to do a triangle for the neck, keeping really sketchy lines because I might have to erase some of them. I like to keep the ones that are good and I erase the ones that aren't. Got a circle for the head, not counting the snout. A triangle for the snout. We've got a line coming down for the back leg. I mean the leg further away from us. We're going to have a line coming out and bending and coming back for the moving leg. A playful horse, having a playful pose here. We are going to have this leg closer to us in the back is going to be stretching back a little bit. So we are getting that shape in there. And then this foreleg, the leg that's further away from us in the back, is kind of coming forward and supporting the weight. So I know this probably looks pretty sketchy and silly and not very accurate, but it's better to get these lines down loosely now because if we need to make any erasing or fix any errors, it's easier to do it when we haven't put a lot of time into it. So those guys are going to be pretty much on the same line. And if that leg was straight, it would be landing right around there. So, but it's up and it's moving, so it's not on that line. Okay, that makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so for the ears, you've got little triangles coming out in either direction. And I'm not going to mess with hair yet, but, you know, it's going to be kind of floating around. So your first sketch should be really loose and free. In that way you are free to change anything that you don't like. Now you can go in and erase some of these lines. They're so light though that I'm gonna leave them be. Now I really like my soft dark pencils like I mentioned before, so I'm gonna go right in with the 6B and I am gonna start figuring out what lines I want to accent and keep. So I like that. I think I want to curve that around a little bit. And then you can start to accent muscles or any other little details as long as they're true, as long as they're in the right place. If you start coming through and you realize, that's not quite right, you want to fix it. You don't want to just you want to shade it because it's there. You want to fix it and make sure that you have an accurate shape. Getting this leg here. I feel like this one should be back just a smidgen. We have that very strong ankle bone. We want to get that in there. And then we've got this area that kind of covers over the hoof. And make sure your back leg is thick enough to support the horse. They have kind of scrawnier front legs and thicker back legs. I think that this is a little too long. This back leg is giving me some trouble in the proportion. I'll show you really quick my sketch for that. And that is definitely kind of an area that I have difficulty with whenever I'm drawing horses, when you have kind of an action pose like that. So I am just gonna take another look at that because I feel like I'm a little off. And they've also got kind of a really strong knee here, and it's always a little kind of strange because their back knees bend backwards. It's almost like they have a big foot, if you think about it, like the structure of that. And get that hoof in there. I think that's a little bit better. And for this guy, I'm gonna thicken up this leg, I think. We've got to make sure we get those muscles in there, and they have strong enough muscles to support their bodies. And getting this kind of knee area in, that's always a little bit of a challenge. And then straight down to the ground. Get it nice and solid. And then it does kind of curve out quite a bit before you get to the hoof. And a lot of times when we go to shade and we start spreading stuff out, spreading out the the graphite, it starts to look a lot more natural, a lot nicer. Now I'm thinking this should be tipped up a little bit more. We don't want the back really bowed or anything. And I'm going to go in and just scribble in some shading. Now you could do that with a graphite stick if you prefer, but I find with something this size, it's no problem to do it with a pencil. The graphite sticks are really great if you are working on a big pad of newsprint or something really large. Get this neck shadowed, and I think I want to bring the head down a little bit like that. Get that nice strong jaw. Angle the nose up. and shade the front of the face a little bit. We've got the eye coming in right here. It's gonna almost look like a triangle, kind of like that. And then you'd see the eyelash of the other eye over there. And then you can shade the jaw a little bit, and we'll get the nostril in there. Because we can start working on detail now that we've got either the basics. Shade the muzzle a little bit. And we want to shade on the forehead because that's kind of a flat passage there. Bring it up a little bit. And get that kind of blocky shape of the face. I feel like I need to move that nostril back a little bit though, because it's definitely making the face a little too tapered. Okay, so now you can use your blending stump, but I do like to use my finger personally to shade. Really force that that graphite around. If you did want to use the graphite stick, let's see, this one is a B, so it's not going to be super dark, not going to be super light. It's going to be a good one, easy one to control. It's really easy because you can put such a even coating of graphite down and you don't end up scribing the paper like sometimes you do when you are using a pencil. Sometimes the tip of the pencil, especially if it's a harder one, will scratch the paper, and then you end up with a line that you can't erase, or too harsh of a line. Just want to get some of the flexed muscles in there. A little bit of shadow here because the hair is going to come over, so the hair would be casting a shadow, so you want to get that in there. Get this musculature in here we want to get. And I just use the edge of the stick. It takes a lot for me to change whatever I'm sketching with. I tend to just, I will use the same the same media the whole time because I just don't want to stop. It's so much fun. If you want to highlight, you can go in. You can actually use either eraser. You can go in with your kneaded eraser for a softer highlight. You can go in with the plastic eraser here, the white plastic eraser for a stronger highlight. But the big thing, no matter whatever you're using to sketch with, the big thing is just to really draw what you see and not what you think you see. So just really develop those skills and you're going to be fine. So now let's put the hair in there. That's always very satisfying to do because it really makes the drawing look finished. I'm going to pull some around. The forelock here, I think that's what that's called. The fur in the front. And also the neat thing about the hair is that it gives it that feeling of movement. Prancing pony with a white mane, so you might need to erase some of the colors here, some of the shading. If you have too much of the back showing through, if you have that line from the back, you can go ahead and erase that out so you have room to put your mane. And then we'll do the tail. And if you're really interested in drawing horses or other animals, you can find anatomy books that are specifically for drawing animals. You know, any of those highlights that look a little too bright, just go right over with your finger, just kind of smudge them, and then that's how you get that really nice kind of musculature look. And you can clean up any stray lines while you're at it, if they bug ya. I kind of like seeing the sketchy lines personally, but it's very easy. Just use the edge of your eraser there, and you can also lighten up lines. If your lines got a little dark when you were sketching, you can lighten some of those up as well. And there you go. Now if you want to add a shadow under the horse, let's go back in with a graphite stick. You can really do whatever you like. This one is kind of, the light's kind of coming from this direction, and the horse is casting a shadow to the side of him. But you can also just do a basic under the animal shadow. Just concentrate it a little bit darker where the where like the hooves touch the ground, and then you just kind of want the body of the shadow right below the animal, and then it can taper off to where like the tail is, because that's going to be real wispy. And I do like to blend it out, and after you've blended it out, chances are you're going to have to go in and just erase some from the feet if you got it a little too carried away, like I tend to do. But there you go. At this point, you're just going to be putting little details, like you've got this kind of like fur growing over the hooves. You just want to make sure you have things as thick as they should be. You make sure the legs are thick enough to support the animal that you've drawn. Make sure the hooves are substantial enough to carry the animal. So just kind of think a little in some practical terms. Does this look realistic? Would this really work? And then those sorts of questions that you ask yourself will become very handy if you like to invent characters and sketch from your imagination, because then you can say, okay, I've seen a horse and I'm trying to draw a centaur, and so I know it should look like this because it would have to support its weight, or I know the wings should be like this because it has to carry this animal. So that sort of thing will come in really handy as you start creating. And you know, don't forget, your eraser is a drawing tool. You can use it to kind of draw in your highlights. You're erasing stuff to be highlights, not just I need to erase a mistake. You can erase your highlights. In fact, I don't really like erasers for erasing mistakes that much. I think that they can kind of make you a little intimidated when used like that, but for creating highlights, they are fantastic. And as you start to refine your drawing and you get towards the end, you can reinforce those really good lines that you liked and sharpen things up. Give him a little more of a lower lip so that his face looks a little bit more realistic. And it's so much fun. I hope you enjoy drawing. I think it's such a wonderful pastime, and I love that you can do it at any age, pretty much in any environment, and with very minimal supplies. And then let me just tap off my eraser crumbs and show you the finished sketch. I hope you enjoyed these sketching tutorials. I had a lot of fun sketching with you today. If you'd like to find more tutorials by me, you can look me up on YouTube or my blog. It's called The Frugal Crafter. Again, my name is Lindsay Weirich for Royal and Langnickel, inspiring the artist in everyone.